Commander John Reyes stood on the observation balcony of the human flagship Valor's Edge, his hands gripping the railing as distant stars streaked by. Below him, the bridge crew moved with precise calm, their eyes flicking between holographic displays in the viewport ahead. John's heart pounded in his chest, but his face held only a hard calm. Moments ago, the Galactic Council's envoy had sent their final message across the void, a demand that humanity submit to the collective accord, surrendering their right to govern their own affairs. They'd given a single hour to comply, or face immediate retribution. Mia Patel, the ship's communications officer, hovered at her console. Her voice trembled when she broke the silence. Commander Reyes, the Council expects our answer in 45 minutes. They're realigning their fleet for bombardment if we refuse. John did not flinch. He tapped the console to enlarge the hologram of the Council's dreadnought formation, a glittering phalanx of alien warships. Thank you, Lieutenant. Send this to all human vessels. We stand free or fall together. You have your answer. A soft chime signaled that the message was dispatched across the network. As the comlink closed, John allowed himself a single breath. His mind drifted back to the day he first joined Earth's Space Navy, an eager youth who dreamed of peaceful exploration. Now, on the brink of war, he felt the weight of every soul under his command. Below deck, Petty Officer Alex Chen, but going by Alex to all, studied the tactical maps. Though Alex's name was simple, their mind was anything but. Every possible outcome flickered through their calculations. Overwhelming Council forces, guerrilla strikes on supply convoys, desperate retreats to hidden bases. None seemed bright, yet Alex's eyes burned with determination. They tapped a new command. Sir, I've updated our battery alignments. If Council ships fire on us, we can respond in kind and aim for their command bridges first. John nodded once. Good. Prepare the gunners. I want full power to shields and weapons. Tell engineering to keep the engines primed for an emergency jump. Outside, the stars twinkled cold and distant. For a moment, John thought he saw a flicker of fear in their light, but he pushed the thought away. Humanity had faced extinction before. We had always risen. Aboard the nearby colony ship Aurora's Hope, Captain Rena Morales gathered her officers in the lower war room. Passenger families huddled behind reinforced bulkheads, clutching children close. Rena met her second-in-command, Lieutenant Aaron Liu. What are our orders? She asked. Aaron swallowed. We hold position and stand by to support Valor's Edge. We'll protect the civilians as best we can. Rena's jaw set in grim resolve. Then do it, and send a message to Earth Command. We will not surrender. Her words carried to every corner of the ship, stirring a fierce pride among soldiers and settlers alike. Back on Valor's Edge, the countdown ticked closer to 0. Mia's fingers flew over her console. 10 minutes to deadline. Council fleet is powering up main cannons. John straightened. He raised his voice so every ear on the bridge could hear. All hands, prepare for battle. Remember why we fight. For every world that calls humanity home. Today we show the galaxy that when human resolve turns to fury, no species will ever forget it. A cheer rose from the bridge crew, fierce and bright. Suddenly, the alarms blared. A warning readout splashed across the forward screen. Incoming Council fighters weaving through the outer defense grid. Alex's voice cut in. Sir, they're probing our shields. Should I authorize counterstrike? John's gaze hardened. Make it so. Target Flight Wing Alpha. Seconds later, the first exchange of fire lit up the void. Brilliant pulses of energy slammed into the Valor's Edge's shields, leaving shimmering cracks of light. Human batteries flared in response, each shot precise and deadly, clipping alien fighters out of the sky. Through the chaos, John felt a strange calm settle over him. He had trained for this moment. Every drill, every mission had led to this. Fight for freedom. He tapped his comm unit. Admiral Hayes to all human vessels. Engage at will. For Earth, for Mars, for every ocean world in between. The voice of Admiral Hayes echoed through the network, a steady, unshakable command. All ships press the attack. Make them regret ever threatening us. Cascading through the human armada, the order sparked a wildfire of action. Cargo haulers converted into gunships. Research vessels turned their defense lasers outward. Even the transport convoys armed their crews and readied boarding parties. John watched it unfold and felt a fierce pride surge. In that moment, humanity was no longer the timid explorer or the fledgling alliance member. They were warriors fighting for their right to exist. Behind him, the communications console chirped again. A council envoy pleaded for mercy, warning that further resistance would bring ruin upon billions. John let the message play through. Then, with deliberate calm, he keyed his response. Your hour of grace has ended. Now taste our fury. As he hit send, the Valor's Edge lurched under the combined fire of its own batteries. Red and blue streaks of energy carved new scars into the blackness of space. And in that fierce light, every human heart aboard watched with unyielding resolve. They knew in their bones that from this moment on, no species in the galaxy would ever forget the fury of humankind. The rippling glow of energy beams faded as the initial battle lull settled over the void. Commander John Reyes stood at the tactical console, scanning fresh sensor data. The human fleet had withstood the first salvo, but the Council's armada was vast and its resolve ruthless. Below decks, Engineer Marcus Lee wiped sweat from his brow in the engine control room. The engines had shuddered under the recent jump maneuvers. He glanced at his team. Adjust coolant flow. We can't risk an overload if they concentrate fire on our engines. His assistant, Lena Ortiz, nodded and tapped her console. Coolant rerouted. Temperatures are dropping back to safe levels. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Humanity's ships might not match the Council's warships in raw power, but they had something more precious. Adaptability. Back on the bridge, Alex Chen leaned over the holographic display. Sir, our counterstrike damaged their lead destroyers. Point defense grid, but they still have 5 more cruisers bearing down on us. John's jaw tightened. Then let's raise the stakes. Prepare the ion pulse cannons. Target their shields to create openings for our main batteries. Alex's fingers danced across the controls. Aye, Commander. Ion pulses charging. Outside, the Valor's Edge drifted into a new attack vector, its broadside aimed at the enemy formation. The ion cannons flared in synchronized arcs, sending waves of crackling energy that scalloped through the alien shields. Where light had been impenetrable moments before, now there were ragged holes, perfect for human lasers to strike deep into the hull. On the opposing side, Admiral Vecra of the Council snarled at her view screen. Her dark eyes narrowed. They learned our shield patterns too quickly. Deploy boarding fighters, disable their cannons up close. At her command, sleek Council fighters peeled away from the cruiser battle group. They darted toward the Valor's Edge, their plasma torpedoes primed. Lieutenant Mia Patel's console beeped with incoming threat warnings. Valiant dozen boarding fighters on intercept course, closing fast. John's voice rang out. Point defense, open fire. Do not let them breach our hull. The bridge erupted with the staccato beat of micro-missiles launched and energy pulses fired. One by one, the alien boarding craft fractured under concentrated fire. 2 still slipped past the defense net and slammed into the side of the ship, with violent force. Below, corridor alarms blared. Steel bulkheads groaned as the boarding fighters tore open a section of armor. Sergeant Tom Holloway led a security squad rushing toward the breach. His boots pounded against the deck plates. Seal doors on my mark, he ordered. Petty Officer Liu Chen took position at the hatch. On your mark, Sergeant. Tom counted down. 3, 2, 1, lockdown. Hydraulic seals hissed, cutting off the breach just as the fighters inside hissed in vacuum. They jammed against the doors, plasma weapons discharging in wild arcs. Above, John monitored the hull breach on his holo display. He exhaled a quiet relief. Damage control secured the breach. Report status? A report came almost instantly. Breach contained. No critical systems lost. Boarding fighters neutralized. John tapped his comm. Valor's Edge to all ships. Our point defense held. push forward and exploit their weakened shields. Far across the battlefield, the human armada pressed the attack. The converted cargo haulers let loose missile barrages. The transport convoy disabled a cruiser with a daring kamikaze strike that shattered through its main bridge. On the Council's flagship Imperious Dawn, Admiral Vecra gritted her teeth. They fight with reckless courage. She peered at an incoming transmission. It was Admiral Hayes aboard the human command ship Liberty's Wrath. Hayes's stern face filled the view screen. You underestimated us when you demanded our surrender. Now we will show you that humanity is not to be trifled with. Vecra's hand tightened on her console. Then let them see our fury in return. She ordered her fleet to concentrate fire on Liberty's Wrath. Back on Valor's Edge, John felt the fleet's shift in focus. Alex, we're vulnerable while Liberty's Wrath takes the brunt. Redirect our support. Send 2 squadrons to assist them. Alex nodded, quickly adjusting the squadron orders. Squadrons Delta and Epsilon are en route to Liberty's Wrath sector. John turned to Mia. Keep our channels open, warn them of any flankers. Mia tapped her display. Already on it, sir. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, human and Council ships clashed in a titanic struggle. On Liberty's Wrath's bridge, Admiral Hayes bellowed commands. Load the disruptor torpedoes, strike their forward shield emitters. Hayes's strategy worked. The disruptor torpedoes tore through the emitters, and the flagship's main batteries slew into position. A brilliant beam punched through the Council flagship's shields, carving a deep gouge along its hull. The Imperious Dawn shuddered. Admiral Vecra watched the damage report scroll. We cannot stand against this onslaught. Yet she refused to yield. With a fierce growl, she activated the flagship's Doomsday Array, an experimental weapon designed to release a massive shockwave across several light years. Unbeknownst to her, the Council scientists had never field-tested it under live combat conditions. Back on Valor's Edge, sensors detected an anomaly, a growing energy buildup at the far edge of the Imperious Dawn. Alex's eyes widened. Sir, the enemy flagship is charging a massive energy discharge. It could wipe out everything in range. John's expression darkened. They're desperate. We can't let them fire that. He tapped his comm. All human ships, focus all fire on Imperious Dawn's weapon arrays. Disable it before it fires. A storm of fire erupted. Missile streams and laser beams struck the flagship's hull. In unison. Its shield flickered under the assault. Admiral Vecra slammed her fist against the console. Maintain shields. Reroute all power there. But human tactics were too swift. With one final concentrated strike, Liberty's Wrath's disruptor cannon severed the weapon array's power conduit. The Doomsday Array stuttered and died. Its energy collapsed harmlessly inward. On the Valor's Edge bridge, relief swept across every face. Commander Reyes allowed himself a tight smile. They've stopped their biggest weapon. Now we press the advantage. Beyond the viewport, human and Council ships continued to exchange fire. The tide had turned, but the war was far from over. And somewhere deep in space, the battered but unbowed Council forces prepared their next move, determined that if they could not subdue humanity by words, they would try again with fire. The battered light of distant stars flickered as the human fleet regrouped after the Council's failed doomsday attempt. Commander John Reyes pressed his palms against the railing on the Valor's Edge's observation deck, his eyes fixed on the swirling battle below. The Council ships were pulling back to repair their shields, but their resolve only seemed to harden. Below decks, Lieutenant Mia Patel monitored civilian channels. Dozens of supported colony ships still hovered nearby, their crews trembling but safe. Mia tapped her console. Commander, civilians are secure. They're asking for updates. Some fear a ground invasion next. John turned, his face unreadable. We'll send a diplomatic team. If there's any chance to end this without more bloodshed, we take it. In the ship's makeshift conference room, Captain Rena Morales of the Aurora's Hope joined John and his senior officers around a hollow table. The flickering 3D model showed human and Council fleets in a tense standoff. Captain Morales spoke first. I can organize the diplomatic detail. I served in peace negotiations before. These council leaders respect strength, but they may still listen to reason. Alex Chen placed a firm hand on the table. Our attack has hurt them badly. They'll see diplomacy as weakness if we approach now. We need to show them we won't back down. John weighed both views. We strike a balance. A small team, heavily escorted, that carries our terms. Cease fire or face continued resistance. But we make clear we would rather end this now than fight longer. Mia activated a secure comm link. The council is broadcasting on Channel Echo. I can patch our envoy through. John nodded. Do it. A shimmering council hologram appeared in the center of the table. A tall, slender figure with pale blue skin and silver eyes. This was Ambassador Krail, the chief negotiator. Krail, John began, voice steady. Commander Reyes of Earth's Space Navy. We propose a parley. We will send an envoy to your flagship. No weapons will be raised during the meeting. You have our word. Krail's silver eyes narrowed. Your word holds little weight after you attacked us first. Your fleet opened fire when we refused surrender, John countered. We simply defended ourselves. The ambassador tilted their head. Very well, we will accept your envoy. But if this is a ruse, you will witness the full might of the collective accord. Understood, John replied. We depart in 2 hours. The hologram dissolved. The room filled with a tense hush. Captain Morales exhaled. I'll assemble the team. 3 officers, 2 security specialists, and myself. Alex shook their head but relented. Under one condition, we maintain tactical escort. No council fighters near our shuttle. Makes sense, John said. Squadrons Delta and Epsilon will escort. Marcus, prep the ambassador's shuttle. Engineer Marcus Lee tapped at a tablet. Shuttle's ready. Stealth fields active to reduce council sensor locks. High above in the command corridor, John Reyes prepared to don his formal uniform. He paused before the viewport, staring into the void. The silence after battle was eerie, like the calm before a storm. At the shuttle bay, Captain Morales, Lieutenant Mia Patel, Sergeant Tom Holloway, and 2 security officers gathered beside the sleek craft Solace's Oath. The hatch hissed open, and they climbed inside. Marcus sealed the door and initiated launch. The shuttle glided away from Valor's Edge, flanked immediately by 4 human fighters. Within minutes, they crossed into Council-controlled space. On the bridge of the Council flagship Imperious Dawn, Ambassador Krail watched the human formation appear on their tactical grid. Admiral Vekra hovered behind them, arms folded. Remain vigilant, Vekra hissed. If these humans betray us, we'll show them no mercy. Krail bowed slightly before the view screen. We await your envoy. The shuttle docked in a side bay. A council officer led the human team into a long, curved corridor lit by soft violet light. At the far end stood a grand chamber, its walls carved with the Accord symbols. Captain Morales stepped forward with steady grace. Ambassador Krail, thank you for agreeing to meet. Krail inclined their head. Captain Morales, Commander Reyes, please be seated. They moved to crystalline chairs around a low table. Morales set down a data pad. We propose a mutual ceasefire. Humanity will respect council borders. In return, you allow us to retain sovereignty over our planetary holdings and representation in the council. Krail's silver eyes glowed. Your terms are bold. The Accord demands uniform compliance from all species. Morales met the gaze. Uniformity stifles progress. Our worlds have thrived under freedom. We ask only that we live our way. Silence fell. Outside, muffled hums of engines and distant weapon systems reminded them both how close the galaxy teetered on the brink of ruin. At last, Krail spoke. Your proposal has merit, but the Council will need guarantees. Morales nodded. We can exchange permanent envoys. We'll open our archives to the Accords Council and jointly patrol disputed sectors to ensure lasting peace. Krail considered. I will present this to the full Council. You will be escorted back to your flagship. Expect our answer in 12 hours. Morales rose. Thank you, Ambassador. We hope for a peaceful resolution. They followed their escort back to Solace's Oath. As the hatch sealed, Sergeant Holloway glanced at Morales. You think they'll agree? Morales monitored the course back. I believe they will consider it, but until then we must be ready for anything. Back aboard Valor's Edge, Commander Reyes reviewed the mission report. He allowed himself a moment's hope that perhaps the fury of battle had shown humanity's strength, and diplomacy would secure their freedom. Yet as the human ships realigned for defensive positions, a shadow passed through John's mind. Battle forged resolve, but only unity could sustain peace. And in those final hours before the Council's decision, both sides prepared for what might come, uncertain whether words could truly conquer the fury that war had awakened. The human fleet held position in the vast expanse of space, awaiting the Council's response. Commander John Reyes stood on the Valor's Edge's bridge, his gaze drifting across the anxious faces of his crew. Every moment felt heavy, each second stretching into an eternity. Below deck, Engineer Marcus Lee monitored propulsion diagnostics. Though engines hummed steadily, Marcus could feel the tension in every circuit board. He leaned toward his console, tracing power lines. We're stable, but if things go south, we may need to reroute auxiliary power from non-essential systems. His assistant, Lena Ortiz, tapped at the keyboard. Understood. I'll prepare rerouting protocols. On the bridge, Lieutenant Mia Patel sorted incoming messages. Commander, we've received the ambassador's reply. They request a private signal meeting in 2 hours. No military channels, strictly diplomatic. John nodded slowly. Very well. Seal off all non-diplomatic communications and prepare the envoy escort squadron, Delta and Epsilon. Moments later, the envoy shuttle Solace's Oath prepared to depart again. A small team boarded, Captain Rena Morales, Lieutenant Mia Patel, and Sergeant Tom Holloway. This time they carried the Council's sealed reply in hopes for peace. As the shuttle detached, John addressed the bridge. Keep shields at maximum and engines primed. If the meeting is a trap, we must respond swiftly. Outside, the human fighters formed a tight formation around Solace's Oath. Their engines glowed like guardian stars. Inside the Council flagship, the envoy team entered the grand conference chamber. Ambassador Krail stood alone, their silver eyes fixed on the humans. No Admiral Vekra this time, only the calm diplomat. Krail's voice was cool. Your proposal intrigues the Council. They wish to test your sincerity, a symbolic gesture. You will return one of our ancestral artifacts stolen during your initial conflicts. Captain Morales exchanged a glance with Mia. Morales's voice stayed steady. We have no record of such an artifact in our possession, but if you can identify it, we will return it. No questions asked. Krail nodded. The Shard of Vethra, a crystal with the Accord's creation sigil. It vanished from our archives centuries ago. Morales leaned forward. The Shard's legend is known to many species. It could have been taken long before this war, but we will search our holdings. Krail regarded her. Failure to produce it by the next meeting will void this parley and restart hostilities. Morales stood and offered her hand. Then we have a mission. We will find the Shard. Back on Valor's Edge, John received the shuttle's report. He turned to Alex Chen. Can we locate any record of the Shard in our databases? Alex's fingers flew over the holotable. There's mention of a Vethra relic in the Earth Museum of Galactic History. It was acquired after the last border conflict 50 years ago. John's eyes lit. Patch me through. Moments later, John spoke with Dr. Elena Foster, the museum's curator. Her image flickered on his holo display. Commander Reyes, the Shard was donated by the Mars Exploration Command decades ago, she said. It's stored in our Earth archives now, sealed behind energy locks. John exhaled. Can you prepare it for immediate transport? Foster nodded. We'll need 2 hours to configure the containment unit and ship it to the nearest human outpost. John tapped his comm. Make it happen. Time is short. Meanwhile, the envoy team awaited the Council's next meeting. Captain Morales studied her datapad. We can't let them slip back to hostility. If we fail, we risk everything. Sergeant Holloway rested a hand on her shoulder. We'll get that Shard. Trust us. 2 hours later, the Shard of Vethra floated within a secured chamber on Valor's Edge. The crystal pulsed with soft light, its ancient sigil glowing faintly. John stood before it, feeling the weight of history. Lieutenant Mia Patel approached. "It's ready for transport." John smiled once. "Good. Send it with the envoy team." As Solace's oath lifted off again, John watched through the viewport. The crystal shimmered in the shuttle's hold, but deep in the Council's war room, Admiral Vecra watched the footage with cold fury. "They found the relic so quickly? This parley is a ruse." Ambassador Krail pressed a hand to their chest. "Trust must be earned. If we proceed with force now, we break the Accord's own laws." Vecra's lips curled in contempt. "Your laws mean nothing when our supremacy is at stake." Krail turned away. "You will not silence the voice of reason, Admiral." On the way to the conference chamber, the envoy shuttle shuddered suddenly. Lights flickered. Captain Morales gripped a handrail. Serena, the pilot, whispered over the intercom, "We've got multiple electronic disruptions. Someone's jamming us." Sergeant Holloway stood alert. "Eject the cargo pod with the shard. Send it via secure drone to the Valor's Edge." Morales barked the order. Serena activated the eject sequence. The pod launched into space, beaming a transponder signal back to the human fleet. But as the pod disappeared, alarms shrieked on Solace's oath. The viewports lit up with Council, fighters converging rapidly. Mia's voice trembled. "They've sealed the hangar doors. We're trapped." Morales nodded grimly. "We know what to do." She tapped her comm. "Valor's Edge. This is Solace's oath. They're betraying the peace meeting. We need immediate extraction." John's voice crackled through. "Hang tight, we're on our way." Outside, the shuttle bay doors of Valor's Edge roared open. A flight of human fighters dove toward the Council flagship. Missiles and lasers cut through the void. Inside the Council chamber, Ambassador Krail rose in alarm. Outside the window, streaks of energy painted the darkness. Captain Morales seized her moment. "Now." She released the emergency override, unlocking the doors. The envoy team sprinted down the corridor. Behind them, Council guards raised weapons, but Sergeant Holloway laid down covering fire. Explosions rocked the corridor. At the docking bay, the shuttle's hatch lowered. Morales slipped inside first. Mia and Tom closed behind. Serena engaged the thrusters. The shuttle shot free just as human fighters strafed the hangar, breaching the hull and creating an opening. Through the viewport, they saw Ambassador Krail standing alone, watching them go. The diplomat's silver eyes glowed with sorrow, not anger. Morales gripped the pilot's console. "Hold on." Solace's oath burst into space, weaving between Council capital ships. Back on Valor's Edge, Marcus Lee guided the returning pod into a secure bay. John raced to the control room as the envoy shuttle docked. The hatch opened and the team tumbled out, breathless but alive, and bearing the shard of Vethra. John met Morales' eyes. "You made it." Morales handed him the glowing crystal. "They broke faith, but we kept ours." John held the shard in both hands. Light pulsed through it as if acknowledging a new chapter. Behind them, the human fleet shifted into attack formation, and in that moment, humanity's resolve burned brighter than ever, ready to face whatever fury the galaxy would bring. The shard of Vethra lay secure in the Valor's Edge's high-security vault, its faint glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Commander John Reyes stood before it, the weight of its history heavy in his hands. Around him, his senior officers gathered, their faces lit by the crystal's soft light. "Thank you, Captain Morales," John said, turning to Rena. "You've upheld humanity's honor." Rena nodded, exhaustion etched on her features. "We did what was necessary. Now we must decide our next move." Below them, the human fleet formed a tight crescent around the crippled Council flagship Imperious Dawn. The Council vessels, enraged by the failed ambush, had unleashed a barrage of fire, but human defenses, shields and ECM arrays, held strong. Alex Chen studied the tactical display. "They've weakened their front lines to reinforce the flagship's shields. If we strike their flanks simultaneously, we can break through." John nodded. Prepare squadrons Gamma and Zeta for a pincer attack. I want those cruisers disabled. Within the hour. In the engineering deck, Marcus Lee and Lena Ortiz rerouted auxiliary power to the forward railguns. We'll need every joule we can spare, Marcus said, fingers flying over the console. Lena tapped a few keys. Power is locked onto the railgun capacitors. We'll have maximum punch on your mark. On the bridge, Lieutenant Mia Patel monitored civilian communications. Colonies are ready to evacuate if needed. They trust us, sir, John allowed. Himself a small smile. Good. Make sure evacuation drones are armed but stand down until ordered. As human fighters roared toward the enemy flanks, the Valor's Edge edged forward to join the assault. Outside, streaks of photon bolts and torpedoes lanced into the void. On the Council flagship bridge, Admiral Vekra slammed her fist on the EO console. They seek to encircle us, divert energy from all non-essential sectors to the forward shields. Ambassador Krail, standing nearby, placed a steadying hand on Vekra's arm. Our people cannot sustain this pace. We must withdraw, or be lost. Vekra sneered. Withdrawal is defeat. We will press on. Back with the assault, human squadrons Gamma and Zeta thundered in, their wings blazing ion trails. Gamma targeted the cruiser Night's End, while Zeta struck Dawn's Wrath. Simultaneously, railgun volleys from the Valor's Edge punched massive holes through their hulls. Explosions bloomed across the alien cruisers as their shields collapsed. Debris scattered like fireworks. Alex's voice crackled over the comm. Both cruisers are down, shields at 20%. John ordered, Press the attack. Seize the moment. Human fighters swarmed the crippled vessels, tethering boarding cables and planting magnetic disruptors. On deck, security teams moved in, engaging Council crews in close-quarters combat. Down in the corridors of Dawn's Wrath, Sergeant Tom Holloway led his squad through smoke and shattered bulkheads. Council soldiers fought with disciplined precision, but human tenacity drove them forward. Tom shouted over the din, Plant the disruptors on the main reactor. We collapse their power grid. His team raced into the reactor chamber. With trained efficiency, they rigged the disruptors. Seconds later, a pulse of energy rippled outward, frying circuits on every deck. On the bridge, alarms shrieked. Admiral Vekra stared at the readouts in horror as power failed in bursts. Krail stepped forward. This conflict will only destroy us. I beg you to stand down. Vekra laughed bitterly. I would sooner see every world burn than bow to humanity. The HFY flagship shuddered under renewed human fire. Its forward shields flickered and died. John Reyes, watching through the tactical holoscreen, felt the moment arrive. He keyed his comm. All ships target Imperious Dawn's bridge section. Fire in 3, 2, 1 now. A concentrated volley of torpedoes and laser beams struck the flagship's command tower. The superstructure collapsed in a cascade of fire and metal. On Valor's Edge's bridge, the holo display went dark. Silence fell, a sudden, eerie void after the roar of battle. Then a collective cheer rose from the human fleet. John exhaled, voice hushed. It's over. But victory tastes bittersweet. The crippled Council vessel still hung defensively, and unidentified survivors drifted in lifeboats among the wreckage. Mia spoke softly. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Ambassador Krail. John adjusted the comm. Krail's silver face appeared, eyes weary. Commander Reyes, the Council yields. We accept your terms. Humanity has proven its strength and its mercy. John allowed himself a nod of respect. Then let us begin anew, as equals. We will return your ships and crews unharmed. Guide us to your survivors. A long pause followed. Then Krail said, We will show you the way. The holo image dissolved. In the aftermath, human engineers worked alongside Council repair teams to tend the wounded vessels. Medical shuttles ferried injured sailors to field hospitals. On the Valor's Edge's deck, John gathered his officers. Rena Morales held the shard of Vethra in a secure case. The Accord will be reforged, she said, and humanity will have its place. Alex smiled, relief and pride mingling in their eyes. We fought well, sir. John met each of their gazes. Yes, but it was our conviction that won the day. Let this be a lesson to every species. When human resolve turns to fury, we defend freedom at any cost. Below, the shard pulsed in its case, a beacon of hope and unity. The council survivors approached in shuttles, their flags lowered in respect. And in that moment, as humans and aliens worked side by side, a fragile peace took root, born not of words alone, but of shared trials and unbreakable resolve. The mightier glow of distant starfields bathed the Valor's Edge in pale light as the human and council survivors worked side by side in the aftermath of battle. Commander John Reyes surveyed the scene from the observation deck. Below, engineers and medics moved in coordinated lines tending to wounded ships and sailors. For the first time since the conflict began, there was no clamor of guns, only the soft hum of repair drones and the muted conversation of two once hostile peoples. He turned as Captain Rena Morales approached, carrying the shard of Vethra in its secure case. "They've set up a makeshift memorial for the fallen," she said quietly. "Both human and council. You should see it." John nodded, the weight of command still heavy on his shoulders. "Lead the way." Together they stepped into the central docking bay, where a long platform had been cleared. Council and human sailors laid down wreaths of flowers and metal, each crafted in the style of their home worlds. Soft lights illuminated the names of the lost carved on a black basalt wall. Lieutenant Mia Patel stood beside Sergeant Tom Holloway, coordinating the ceremony. Mia caught John's eye and gestured for silence. The crowd hushed as a council elder began to speak in gentle, resonant tones. "Today, we honor those who gave their lives for peace," the elder intoned. "May their courage unite us across the stars." The human officers bowed their heads. John felt a lump rise in his throat as he recalled the friends he had lost. But he also felt a fierce pride in the human spirit and in the fragile bonds now forming with the council. After the ceremony, Alex Chen led John and Rena to a temporary council chamber on the Valor's Edge. Council representatives and human leaders filled the room, leaning over a long table bearing star maps and holographic displays. Ambassador Crail was already there, seated at the head. Their silver eyes held a somber warmth. "Commander Reyes," they said, voice low, "we have drafted the new accord terms. We wish for your review." John took his seat. "Thank you. Let us begin." As holographic text unfurled between them, the two sides debated details, trade routes, shared defense pacts, cultural exchanges. Captain Morales offered her insight on civilian transport corridors. Alex recommended safeguards for joint research stations. Mia and Sergeant Tom ensured that security protocols protected both peoples equally. Throughout the discussions, voices remained respectful and earnest. No longer were humans and council members shouting over one another. They listened. Hours passed as they shaped the treaty. When at last the final clause appeared, Ambassador Crail rose. "This accord marks a new chapter," they declared. "Together we will guard peace as fiercely as we once guarded our worlds with war." John stood, meeting Crail's gaze. "We pledge our strength, our knowledge, and our honor. May we never forget the fury that brought us here, and may it never rise again." A round of applause rippled through the chamber. Later, in the Valor's Edge's quiet aft corridor, Engineer Marcus Lee and Lena Ortiz adjusted reactor controls to stabilize the ship for council refugees. Marcus glanced at the steel-plated walls. Hard to believe it took near annihilation to bring everyone here. Lena tapped a status screen. "True, but now we've proven what cooperation can build. Watch this. I'm syncing our drive cores with their power specs. Soon their ships will be as efficient as ours." Marcus grinned. "Let me know when you need more coolant loops." Across the ship, Rena Morales stood with Sergeant Tom Holloway, watching council children learn to play human board games brought aboard as a peace gesture. Laughter echoed down the corridor, a sound rarer than gunfire in recent days. Rena smiled at Tom. "Who'd have thought we'd be teaching them star traders?" Tom chuckled. "Next, we'll learn their games. Might help them trust us. Even more." Back on the bridge, John Reyes and Ambassador Crail watched the first joint patrol vessel launch, its crew a mix of human and council sailors. The ship's engines glowed with combined technology. Crail exhaled softly. "This is history in motion." John offered a small nod. "It's what we fought for." Sensors pinged with incoming messages from Earth and Council homeworlds, all celebrating the new accord. Flags from both governments fluttered across comm screens in colorful arrays. Mia Patel tapped the console. "Commander, both governments have sent their congratulations. And a request. Would you host the signing ceremony on Valor's Edge?" John glanced at Crail, who inclined their head in assent. "Yes," he said. "Let this ship be where we all took our first steps toward peace." As the new council and human delegations gathered in the Grand Hall, Rena placed the shard of Vethra in a specially designed display at the center, a symbol of shared trust. Its crystal facets caught the lights overhead, casting rainbows on the assembled crowd. John stood with Captain Morales at his side as Ambassador Crail stepped forward to sign the accord projection with their silver quill. John added his own signature with steady resolve. The moment the accord solidified, the hall erupted in applause and cheers. Above them, through the transparent ceiling, the starry expanse of space stretched endlessly, no longer a battlefield, but a frontier of friendship. Commander John Reyes raised his voice so all could hear. "Today we choose unity over fury. May our combined resolve stand as a beacon for every species. The galaxy will never forget this day." And as lights flashed, voices joined, and the shard glowed brighter than ever, humanity and the Council stepped forward together, resolute, hopeful, and at peace. Dawn's pale light filtered through the viewport as Valor's Edge glided in peaceful orbit above the newly established neutral station, Artemis Haven. Commander John Reyes stood at the railing, watching cargo shuttles come and go, each bearing supplies, scientists, and families from both human and Council worlds. The hard edge of war had faded, replaced by quiet cooperation. Behind him, Captain Rena Morales approached, a steaming cup of synth coffee in hand. "Hard to believe we're here," she murmured, offering him the cup. John accepted it with a grateful nod. "We've come a long way since the first shots rang out." He gazed down at the station's gleaming hull. "This was meant to be a staging point for war. Now it's a beacon of peace." Rena smiled softly. "And it will grow. We've already approved plans for a university, research labs, even a memorial garden around that crater from the battle." John lifted an eyebrow. "A memorial garden?" Rena nodded. "Life springs from the scars of war. It feels fitting." He sipped his coffee and let the warmth settle. "I like that." In the operations room, Lieutenant Mia Patel oversaw the final steps of the station's handover. On the main holo display, human and Council flags waved side by side. Alex Chen hovered near, adjusting supply schedules. Mia glanced at John. "Commander, the first joint research vessel is ready to depart. Scientists from Earth and Vethra Prime will study the local star's habitability." John nodded. "Let them go. Keep me informed." Nearby, Sergeant Tom Holloway and Engineer Marcus Lee greeted new arrivals. Lena Ortiz guided them to docking, clamps. Laughter and greeting phrases mixed in a chorus of languages. Tom turned to Marcus. "You ever think we'd be giving tours instead of battle plans?" Marcus shrugged, wiping his hands. "I wouldn't trade it for anything." On the bridge, John took his seat as the station's Council delegation. 3 humans and 3 Council representatives entered the room. Ambassador Crail led the Council side, their silver eyes bright with hope. "Commander Reyes," Crail said, voice warm, "we are grateful to your crew for making this transition smooth." John stood. "It's our honor. Artemis Haven belongs to both of us." Rena joined them, placing a small box on the console. She opened it to reveal a delicate model of the station, hand-etched from a rare crystal. "A gift from Earth," she said. "May it remind all who see it of what we can achieve together." Crail's eyes softened. "We will display it proudly." With the formalities complete, the delegation turned to the viewport. Below, The station's new gardens bloomed with alien foliage entwined with Earth's flowers. Robots tended the beds, exchanging data with council maintenance drones. Alex whispered to Mia, "I heard they're planting human roses beside Vethron luminescent vines." Mia smiled. A perfect blend. In the quiet calm, John allowed himself to reflect on the journey. He recalled dark nights of planning ambushes, the roar of cannons, the sting of loss. But most of all, he remembered the rallying cry that had ignited humanity's spirit. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Marcus entered the bridge, wiping oil from his uniform. "Commander, we've completed the final engine tests. Valor's Edge is ready for its first goodwill mission, escorting a convoy of medical ships to the rim worlds." Rena joined him. "They need vaccines and surgeons. It's the first real test of our cooperation. Save lives together." John looked around at his team. Rena, Alex, Mia, Marcus, Lena, Tom, all standing as one. "Then let's go." Moments later, Valor's Edge slipped from orbit, joined by Council frigates. They formed a proud escort as medical vessels glided ahead. Below deck, Lena saw a Council engineer, Aaron, studying human reactor schematics. She waved. Aaron returned the gesture, and they both bent over the display, sharing insights. In the comms, Mia listened as children on the station began learning to speak each other's languages. She smiled, recalling the days when every message was encrypted, suspicion lacing every syllable. On the observation deck, John and Rena stood side by side as the convoy disappeared into the stars. Rena placed a hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she said quietly. John nodded, voice full of quiet pride. "We did." As the stars streaked past, he thought of the Council's former warships now converted to hospital ships, of families reunited, of a university where human cadets walked halls alongside Vethron scholars. In the command corridor, Sergeant Tom Holloway and Council Lieutenant Varys clasped forearms in salute. No uniforms, only shared purpose. And in the heart of Valor's Edge, the shard of Vethra pulsed softly in its display, a symbol of trust, reborn. Commander John. Reyes returned to the bridge's center seat. He tapped the comm panel. "All ships, this is Commander Reyes, report status." One by one, voices came in, human and Council alike, each confident, hopeful, united. He leaned back, eyes on the stars ahead. "Set course for home," he ordered. "We've new worlds to build." The hum of the engines rose in gentle power. Outside, space stretched endless and inviting, and as Valor's Edge carried its crew toward the future, humanity's deepest resolve, tested by fury and tempered by cooperation, shone brighter than any star.